What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? Long awaited, but this is the Heroes and Mutants podcast, your number one source of superhero talk. Ruben is finally back on. Thank you for joining us today, Ruben. And we have someone who's going to be joining in is going to be a new co-host on this also. I'm excited to introduce him, my good friend Albert. I've known Albert about 10 years. He's a big superhero fan. So just before we talk today, why don't we get into what we're going to discuss today? Why don't we get into a little bit about you, Albert? At what point did you become a fan of superhero? What was like your aha moment? Or, oh man, I'm a fan of superheroes. And who's your favorite character?
I definitely think the Blade movie, or even before that, the Spawn movie got me into superheroes as a whole. But I grew into a Spider-Man fan. I think the 90s animated series did a lot to help in that. And like the whole Spider-Verse just run in general, like exposing me to all the different types of Spider-Man out there is really dope. I'm a huge Spider-Man like UK fan, so I know we're doing Miles later, but
so Spider-Punk,
get on that when we get to it. Yeah.
Well, it's cool, man. I know you and I have talked about this for a long time, so I'm glad we're finally able to make that happen. So Albert is here. We're excited to have you as an excellent addition to this. So let's get into it. We're a little bit behind. I apologize about that. Obviously, we got 3 films that we need to talk about, but we're just going to start, obviously, from the one that came out the longest ago, or the one that we obviously have to get through right away. But Guardians 3 was long awaited, man, and this was something I was super looking forward to. I was saying this is probably going to be post Endgame, probably one of the better films just because of everything it had going for it. And at the end of the film, I was like, well, that I was right for having that assumption from the beginning. Not only that, but it was just such an emotional, like these Guardian films have this really great way of being these emotional freaking gut punches. And I feel like this one was probably the most emotional for me just because of going into Rocket's backstory and everything that he went through. But how about you guys? Did you guys like kind of feel like what was your guys' assumptions, or how did you guys feel that this movie was going to be in the very beginning? Just seeing the trailers and knowing that this is going to be the final iteration with this version of the Guardians.
You can go ahead and go first, Robert. Go ahead.
Albert.
Oh, Albert. Sorry, Albert.
No, you're good.
That's my fault. Albert.
I was just gonna say the first thing I noticed was how well. And I'm not gonna go on tangent mode too quick, but you know,
go for it.
The Little Mermaid just came out, and the facial expressions in animals. I mean, with Rocket's like 89 group, you could see them smile, like they actually had emotion. It was like a little cartoony, but not too unrealistic. So, I guess we were able to like just empathize more.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, that's most definitely. I really thought it was awesome, dude. It was sweet, long awaited, but I would just put it up there where it's like, I think it's the next best trilogy after freaking Batman. It's different universes, but I know we already had the Captain America, Iron Man, and all that. And those are sweet, great superheroes, right? But I don't know. I think Guardians of the Galaxy is like up there on a different level just because of the fact that it's a comedy. I feel like it's more comedy than serious. Not just about a billionaire and then a old school war hero. Like. There's how would you say, like the outfits, the outcasts, you know what I mean? Like they're just misfits and they're not like your ordinary superhero. It was sweet overall. The backstory, Bradley Cooper killed it. Like,
definitely, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Even just like setting the tone right away, because obviously the first shot we see is the High Evolutionary reaching into the cage, and you see Rocket is the only one who isn't afraid and just stands his ground and is like more curious than anything. Not only that, but then you also like there's a little subtle nod to how the High Evolutionary is super evil, because animal trainers, they'll tell you when you're going to pick up an animal, you pick it up palm facing up like this and not going in like this, because this is less threatening. This is more threatening. So you right away okay, this guy's is a complete SOB. But just not only that, but that shot. Something I didn't fully realize, but that transition shot of Rocket when he's in the cage and then him in the present day, you realize just the kind of pain that he went through because they had to restructure his entire skull. And he makes reference to that in the first Guardians movie where he says, I didn't be asked to be torn apart and put back together over and over again. And just like, oh my God, like that was really that one point I was like, wait, they had to completely restructure his skull and just like how much pain Rocket had to go through. But along with that too, the very beginning song that Rocket plays on the Zune is an acoustic version of Creep by Radiohead. And it's a song about self-hatred. So right away, we're seeing that the cool thing is that I didn't notice about this, but James Gunn actually picks out his track list for the music for his movies and writes them into the script, and will play the songs on set. So that way the actors can actually fully immerse themselves into the scene and immerse themselves into how it relates to the story and why and James Gunn will also relate to them like, oh, this is the reason we're playing this song, this connection to the story, this scene is because of this and this. So I think that's a really cool way to kind of have this immersive experience and have it feel very visceral. But that whole scene in the very beginning was just like very melancholic, and I just felt like very gloomy. And I'm like, oh man, this is like, I'm already gonna start crying just because I already know like where this is gonna go.
Yeah.
So I definitely got that sense right away.
And it's crazy. I'll touch a little bit more on how you said the eyes. Like you could see it. It's all in the eyes, bro. Like he started off as an innocent little raccoon, all happy, right? Playing with his family. He sees the hand. Everyone backs out, and he's the only one that said. I think a lot of people too. Like he's a brave one because everyone just went to the back, and he stood there all scared with the hand coming at him. But it's all in the eyes where he saw happy, then sad, and like you say, where it goes fast forward. He does look sad, and he's like, damn, he's been through a lot for sure, most definitely. And the music, I think Guardians of the Galaxy has the best soundtrack movies when it comes to
I'll just piggyback off of that and just say like I feel like music has always been a part of like just Guardians as a whole. And he went the extra mile with this one, especially with like trying to make sure this was more emotionally driven. Like I don't even know if that's the right term to use, but it definitely wasn't as funny as like the first two.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people say before I saw the reviews and all that, they were like, it's like a roller coaster, right? It's gonna be emotional. You're gonna be feeling happy, sad, lost. But I thought it was a great movie overall, without a doubt.
And not playing on with that, but you also have obviously like going in tandem with all these kind of like gloomy, melancholic feelings with Rocket, but you see just how far Star-Lord has fallen, just because if you guys had seen the Guardians of the Christmas special that they had, he was kind of in like the same kind of place with that because of him suffering. Not Gamora is there, but she's not the Gamora that he knew. So obviously he's suffering from that, and like she's there, but she's not really there. So you kind of see him in that same place with that. And even though it's meant to be, I will say it's meant to be comedic, but looking deeper, it's just like, man, this guy is in a hell of a lot of pain because of what he went through, not being able, feeling guilty that he wasn't able to save her, and then not being able to kill Thanos, and then snapping out, having half the world being snapped away and everything. And not only that, but just going in like a lot of just, I think the thing that really permeates Guardians, that really defines it, is loss. Is everybody suffered some kind of loss, and you see them in the very beginning in Guardians 1 and how like they don't even want to be a team and nobody cares about each other. And then by the end, by the final phase of this trilogy, we see then just how deeply they care for each other and how much they see themselves as family and how connected they are. Like a lot of that is just so beautiful, and a lot of that is just well written, well acted, like everything. And one of the things too, like that you see really popular criticism in a lot of like more so animated movies, but any movie where there has to be a voice actor, a lot of times people are like obviously we saw Chris Pratt with Mario recently, and that's like a big thing that people criticize. But from the very beginning, like I remember seeing, wait, Bradley Cooper is going to be Rocket Raccoon? Okay, let's see how this goes. And I'm like, okay, it sounds okay. But then just as time went on and he got more accustomed to the role and more, I'm just like, nobody could have played this role better than him. And he really shines in this film. I really, really feel like the thing that will always hit me was after, spoilers, I'm sorry, obviously, I don't need to mention that, but I just want to make sure everyone knows. The thing that really elevated it to that next level for me is just hearing his scream after Lila dies right in front of him. Like anybody who's been through any kind of loss, has any kind of traumatic event, you can really relate to just that scream and just how visceral it was, and just how how deep that impact was and how deep that loss was for him. And at that point, I'm like, oh God, Bradley Cooper is just this nobody could have done this role better, in all honesty.
Yeah, and that literally explains why Rocket Raccoon is the way he is. You know, it's like that backstory literally touches on everything, and like, man, we understand him more than before, more than I did before. You know.
Definitely. And they
Yeah,
all. I'll keep. No, go ahead, Robert.
I was just gonna say just the way that they handled his and Lila's relationship too, where it was more of a like an equal understanding of each other rather than like a superhero girlfriend. Um, I don't know. It was different. I like that. Just wanted to throw that out there, I guess.
That makes
I
yeah,
also
because
love
obviously we had seen when his profile popped up when they got arrested in the first Guardians, it said associates Groot and Lila, so people were expecting that was going to be explored somewhere down the line. And obviously in the comics they're lovers, but here there maybe was a hint of that. We didn't really explore it, but obviously like there was this deep connection and this deep bond, but that wasn't this traditional cliche superhero.
Right, it wasn't the focus.
Yeah, lover story. But they say that your story can only be as good as its villain. So I thought the High Evolutionary was great, but what do you guys think? Do you guys think that this is a good villain, or wish we could have seen somebody else? Or how do you feel like the High Evolutionary impacted the story?
I mean, like he's needing to be good. That's what his main, like, well, every villain, right? They always see the good and the bad that they're really trying to do. Like he is trying to, evolutionize the future. I mean, I don't know if it was animals, but I guess it's easier than doing it to a human, right? But it's still crazy because we saw how he created a whole planet, or he's created a bunch of planets. We didn't see that, but we know he created a bunch of planets. And just when one little thing goes wrong, like he just destroys it all. I think that's wild. It's like, damn, that's like he loves what he does, but he could also be a complete opposite and be as careless as, like, like, damn, as a villain
Right.
would. So I'm like, yo, like it fit the part though because of animal, animal cruelty and all that kind of stuff. And Rocky Raccoon is always like, I ain't a raccoon, and then we figured that out. He finally figured that out at the end. I think that touched me, like, man, that was crazy. But I think he's just, it's animal cruelty, yo. Like he's a real super villain, a villain that we haven't seen like before. You know what I mean? And I think that's just a way to introduce Alpha Force, right? Alpha Flight, like it's a superhero team of, wait, is it Alpha Flight or A Force? One of the animal freaking superheroes.
People from Marvel, or
Oh, is it for the one where all the main characters are like animal variations of like the
I know
main
what you're talking
heroes?
about. I can't think of their name, but yeah, I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
I forget too. But yeah, they're it's just a way to introduce a team of animals. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing's gonna happen anytime soon, but like down the line. I just know that because as a comic collector, I thought I had it right here, but I didn't. But yeah, I think that's just another way to introduce it. But overall, he was a different type of villain that we haven't seen. Like, because he's basically just trying to evolutionize life.
Right.
And he just killed everybody when just one little glitch.
What about you, Albert? How did you feel about the High Evolutionary?
No, yeah, dude. I feel like he definitely fit the theme of like this fourth phase. I mean, bar Jonathan Majors as a person, like his character as the villain of Ant-Man. I like how they're mixing this like almost Zemo-esque type where they're just both brain and brawn. I mean, through the entire movie, I know the word permeation came up, but like you can feel the high evolutionary's presence throughout the entire movie, and like it felt like he had his hands on everything, and I thought that was like super oppressive, and I don't think they make really movies like that anymore, where heroes kind of just are working from the hill up. So it was dope.
What exactly do you mean by that? Working from the hill up?
I mean, they always have that part of the movie where they're like down bad, but it's never like from the start, from the jump, you know. If that makes sense. Like there was a like even I think before they knew they were fighting against him, they were fighting against him type of thing, if that makes sense.
And I feel like Rocky probably
Oh,
knew
to
that
the
he was gonna.
rocket. Yeah.
Well, I feel like Rocky probably knew that he was set on a collision course to meet up with the High Evolutionary again, or was going to confront him or face him at some point. Obviously, because he doesn't talk about his past, the others didn't exactly know. But that was like the whole thing too, where once he realized Rocky was injured, he said, like, I have an idea about where they're going. Obviously, they were going to go back trying to get the files and get his record. But I did, because I remember I actually thought, remember this actor, I can't think of his name, something Luigi. This is the same guy who played Mern who was the leader of the squad in Peacemaker. He played their squad leader. So I remember seeing that he was cast in this because obviously James Gunn did that too.
Right.
So I remember seeing that he was on the casting list. So I was like, oh, okay, this guy's a pretty good actor. I assumed it was maybe going to be like a secondary role. I didn't know that he was going to be the main antagonist. So right away, I was like, oh, okay, cool. This guy played a moderate good guy, a decent person in this one. Now he's going to play the villain. We'll see how that comes about. But I really thought that he shined and really killed it. He's probably one of the more memorable villains that we've seen in a long time, and just comes off as evil, but not incredibly sadistic. He's sadistic in a way, but I think he feels justified in that sense because there's a purpose for what he's doing. Like, I'm not trying to conquer the world. I'm trying to perfect it. I want things to happen that are going to be like, I'm playing God essentially, and I need to make things happen. And like you had said too, like Quill points that out, like, you know, I see drug deal, like, you know, you trying to say that this is an advanced society, this is utopia, but I see the same things. I see imperfection everywhere. And he's just like, yeah, you're right. Just like up in his, just destroys that whole counter Earth and everything that he had created. So, and those are obviously those same, because of the solution that Rocket gave him with I think the filtration system in that chamber. Obviously those are the ones that got created because of that. So those were technically like supposed to be the advanced ones also. So that was pretty wild that he was just willing to do that right away. But, and I think his most evil.
I don't know if you saw go for it.
Oh no, go ahead.
And I was just gonna say, cause touching on Rocket, like it's like, yeah, social media. Cause after I saw the movie, you know, people always do spoilers. So I always wait at least a week just so, you know, people could see what they gotta see. But I saw a meme. Well, not a meme, but like a playback where they were like, "Damn, this joke from like Endgame, it's like a trip to me now. It makes a lot more sense, or it just hits like the heart a little deeper." Where like Iron Man comes back from being found in outer space, right? And then he's like, what are you? I thought you were a Build-A-Bear, right? When Tony Stark tells Rocket Raccoon that, and then he's like, well, what if I am? You know? And I'm like, damn, like that touches on more because he literally was built into something, you know? And it's like, I think that touches deeper on the heart when he said that in Endgame, because it's like, yo, now we understand his backstory. He literally was, which we already kind of knew, you know, because there's no talking animals. And it just makes that joke a little bit hurtful. Like, damn, I thought you were a Build-A-Bear. Maybe I am.
I mean, he didn't mean, obviously he didn't mean it in a derogatory kind of way, but now what we know is,
yeah,
exactly. Oh damn, you look at that in a different lens, like, oh, that was actually kind of hurtful to say, honestly.
Yeah,
and
like
one
but
thing
I do think James Gunn wrote that as like a him kind of like, because I don't think Rocket Raccoon actually, like thematically, I don't think he knew he was a raccoon. Like,
well, he didn't know what it was. Remember in the very beginning when Quill called him a raccoon, he was like, what? Like, and that couple times he was actually ready to snap, or he was like, wait, what's a raccoon? He's like, oh, it's what you are. And then every time he was called that, he would like snap at them because he thought they meant it in a bad way, or he thought that they were being demeaning.
So he has retorted to that a couple of times. And, I mean, that does make sense.
Man,
it's pretty cool to see it all come full circle, because obviously there was always a running gag where he would get mistaken for a different species. Like he got mistaken for a badger, a fox. I think Adam Warlock called him a squirrel, and obviously
like
Thor called him Rabbit, which I think he preferred being called Rabbit the most, honestly, because him and Thor formed that bond really quick. But it's cool to see all that come full circle and have him have that recognition, or like that epiphany, like, oh crap, I am a raccoon.
Yeah, that most definitely. I thought that took me out a lot. My bad. Yeah, it took me out a lot for sure. But everything is always connected some way, somehow. I'm a ghost, guys. Just kidding. Everywhere connects some way, somehow. The Marvel universe. Like I'm pretty sure James Gunn, like Albert said, like he caught that and went off of that. It's nothing big, but it's like, damn, he went off of that. Or who knows? Maybe they told James Gunn to go based off of that little joke. I love it though. I love it.
One thing that actually stood out to me, and that I was glad that they did this, because it was cool to see her have her time to shine, but I really feel like Mantis had a pretty huge impact on the story and was the voice of her being an empath. Obviously, she was going to be the emotional reason and the emotional intelligence in here. So obviously, like to come at when he's like, oh, like, you know, like we about this, and she's like, well, you abandoned your family too, and she's like, well, no, my grandpa was the one who threw me out of the room, and he's like, well, he was probably just going through a lot or had a lot of emotions coursing through him. Like, I really like how she had like those justifications and those reasons to kind of confront that and say, hey, dude, like that wasn't cool what you did. And I just felt like her being an empath, having that emotional justification was really something that I was like, you know, it's something that really played on what I was like in a way for them to like involve everybody into the story, as opposed to just, you know, when you have these kind of team up movies and a lot of characters, sometimes characters get thrown into the backside. I mean, obviously Titans is a huge example of this, but it was cool that every character had some kind of purpose or had some kind of justification and a reason for actually being there in the story, as opposed to just coming back because we expected it. Did you guys feel the same way, or like any other characters that like you guys would relate that to?
Well, I was just gonna say, one, I think Mantis is underrated, and I think she needs a training arc. She needs to learn martial arts. But two, yeah, I think it needed to be her. Because I mean, the rest of the Guardians call Quill out pretty often, and I mean, he kind of just takes it as a joke. It's almost like a riff, but because like that's Mantis's power specifically, I feel like it hits a little harder.
Yeah, I just feel like, yeah, they do need to give more love to, just to touch on what you said, Albert. It's like I feel like Mantis doesn't get enough love, and I feel like she's more powerful than they actually play her to be. Like, yo, she has mind control basically, you know, like that's a way more powerful, you know, power than people actually think, or who knows. I feel like she hasn't even broke into her full potential, and I think that's why I explained at the end where she's like, you know what, I need to go figure out what I really want to do. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're my half brother. It was cool, you know, being with you, this and that. But
Well,
I
peace
only
out.
did that.
Really though.
I mean,
Well, because isn't she like a planet hopper in like the comic books?
she's something like that. And speaking on that too, because I know she's actually a master martial artist and a great fighter. We saw a little bit of action. We're going to obviously talk about that in its entirety, so let's wait a little bit. But
Okay, cool.
yeah, we had a lot of that, so it was just cool because a lot of times like she was kind of being thought of as like, oh, you're useless, or you're somebody like we can't really take into battle, or you don't really have any use for the team. So it was cool to kind of have her confronting that and be like, hey, dude, like be that emotional reason for that. But you are right. I think with her it does hit harder because obviously she can sense emotions and she knows what it's like. She can essentially read people without touching them because she's gotten so good at that. So I feel like with her saying it's something you want to take into consideration, because it's not like it's somebody's biased opinion. This is looking at it from that viewpoint of staring at it like, hey, dude, this isn't right.
No, yeah. And I was gonna say, like you said, like the entire movie was about loss. I mean, you know, so I feel like because they're dealing with that too, like they're taking into account that Mantis is an empath. So yeah.
And I guess since we kind of did bring it up, and now it's an easy transition for us, but I honestly feel like that final Guardians fight, that hallway fight set to No Sleep Till Brooklyn, is probably one of the greatest action fighting sequences we've seen, not only in comic book films, but just in films as a whole. And I heard that James Gunn was inspired by Oldboy for that. Makes sense with the whole kind of one take thing that they were going with, and being in a tight corridor hallway. I'll break it down a little bit more, but what did you guys think about that fight and where it ranks amongst like better fight scenes? Like, how did you guys like it?
Go for it, Albert.
I like anything one take. I mean, even if it's even if you have to edit it up and make it look like it's one take, it's just nice to look at. And I know, Nick, you're a really big fan of the Marvel Daredevil series, and I know like even that first corridor scene had little elements of an Oldboy in it. It just
Definitely.
I don't know, it feels tactile, you know, feels tangible, feels crunchy, and I like that. It's not a bunch of beams and stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was a really great fight scene because of the fact that all the angles that they actually got in that fight scene. Normally you just get it from 3 angles tops, you know what I'm saying? But there was so much going on one time, at one time, where it's just like, yo, like, and the way they were, you know, switching the camera angle on the majority of the fact, and it's like you saw things coming off the wall, you know, drag stabbing people. Rocket Raccoon, you know him, always going crazy with the gun. He even ran on Groot's freaking arm and all that while it was extended.
And he threw him
I
up.
thought it was
That was
wild,
probably
yeah.
one of the greatest shots ever. That was, and then threw him
Yeah,
up
so
like,
I'm like,
bro,
dude,
that was so
and that was
dope.
and that was those weren't even like real actors, you know, it was more like CGI. And even for it being CGI and the scene like that with Rocket and Groot, it was so sweet. Like Nick said, it's like one of the best fight scenes, you know, in that thing, and or scenes in that thing in the movie. So it's like, yo, like, and we already know Star-Lord, everything he's gonna do, but it's sweet. And even Gamora sliding across the floor, but you can see everyone fighting on the background. Like, I thought it was pretty sweet. I thought it was awesome for that fight.
I think what it does really well, it really incorporates, and this is something I mentioned about it was cool that they found a way to incorporate Mantis into the story and have her give her own takes on things. This is essentially what this fight does for every member of the Guardians. We see them have their own time to shine. They all have different fighting styles and different techniques and different ways that they approach combat, different strategies. So it's cool to see that, you know, like we even see Mantis get a little acrobatic and do some awesome stuff with that. I think she starts the scene by doing like that crazy jump spin kick. And then you see her like swinging on Groot's branch and does like wrap her legs around that dude's head and throw him backwards into Groot's tree. And then transitioning to like, that's when Rocket kills a Hellspawn. You see like that classic shot of Rocket on Groot's shoulder that leads to him running across the bench and Groot throws him up for that awesome free. That's something that's such a comic book shot. It was, yeah. Like this is probably the best example. Not only is it just an amazing fight sequence, but this is probably the best example of like a team up fight sequence that we've ever seen before. And like I said, it just does a really good job giving all of them their chance to shine and everybody do their own thing and have their own. Because obviously Quill is not going to fight like Gamora or Nebula, being that he's more resourceful with his weapons, and you don't really see him like do crazy hand-to-hand or crazy kicks and stuff like that. So I think it just went really well with each character's persona and fit in with their personality and their style and their demeanor and how they approach sequences and scenarios with combat. So I just think that hit the nail on the hammer really good with it all. And not only that, but it was set to one of my favorite songs of all time with No Sleep to Brooklyn by the Beastie Boys. Like the minute that came on, I was like, I'm ready to freaking go. Let's get this action sequence going. I hope it doesn't end. If it ends, I'm giving this movie a 9.9 out of 10. This fight should just never end. I wish I was still sitting in the theater watching it right now.
But and I appreciate the fact that they branched out of like certain eras with music too. Just going back to the music thing, like it really did feel nice to hear Beastie Boys.
Yeah, really big. And I ain't gonna lie, that's probably the first time I heard a song from them in like 2 years tops or something like that, you know. And I only know the Beastie Boys too because of my pop, you know. So like it's crazy. Like I ain't gonna lie, it just brought back memories, and it was a cool song. I like Nick was saying, like every scene, whether it's sad or legit, a fight, action scene, the music goes well with what is going on.
Yeah, I mean, it'd have been a lot more limited too if they'd have just stayed with the Walkman, like because
in the first one.
Yeah, you know, like he only listened to music that was like what in the 60s, 70s.
Up until probably about like the mid to late 80s, because I think he got kidnapped like 89. But obviously, just being whatever music he had, I think most of that music came from his mom. So she probably wasn't really listening to golden era hip hop.
That's true.
So yeah, man, that was such a great fight sequence, and I'm like super glad that we got to see them fight and shine just that last time, just to see like that's well, not only that, but then you see them team up against the High Evolutionary, and that was like, it's funny too because James Gunn just revealed that this whole trilogy, Rocket was actually the secret protagonist, and we saw that come full circle in this film. If you would have told me that like in the first one, I'd be like, oh, obviously Star-Lord is the main protagonist. He's the leader, and this is his story, and this is from his lens. But now seeing like where things went and how they developed, now you're looking at that like, damn, this is Rocket has really been the secret protagonist of this series this whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, he's lived like the most fulfilled life. You know, like Groot was his surrogate son. I mean, he was like a father figure type thing. I don't know, like it's wild to think that like as far as character maturity goes, like he's probably grown the most.
Definitely.
True, and not only that, he has a couple years on him because Groot had to turn into a baby again.
Right.
And I mean, he didn't get to fly off into that big blue sky with his friends, obviously with the other subjects in the with Floor, Teefs and Lila, but he did with his other family. So technically, he did accomplish that. Just he didn't get to accomplish that with the ones that he originally set out to
His
do it
first
with.
friends, yeah.
But
And
yeah,
not only
it's,
that, to touch on that, I think it's dope because his backstory makes a lot more sense of who he is now that we know him. Because obviously he's a guardian of the galaxy, but he's in the sky like he wanted to with his friends, right? He only goes to planet Earth or different planets when he has to, but like I still think when I think of Earth, like and you go to another planet, then I still think of the trip. I still consider it out there, even though they have their own version of their sky. I still think he's living the life in the sky, what he wanted to do with his friends. And I think it's awesome because he's a guardian of the galaxy. So no matter what, he's out there, and I think that's awesome. And I just didn't think of that till right now, to be honest.
One thing that I'm actually really glad that they did do, because I really feel like just the way the story goes, like it wouldn't make sense from a narrative perspective. But I'm actually glad that Gamora and Peter didn't end up reconciling, because I feel like that would have been a cliche thing to do. Like they're, these characters are essentially, she's not the same character, didn't have those same experiences, didn't go through that growth, that development with him. For them just to have them end up together, I thought would have been a real detriment to the story. The fact that, and plus too, real life is not like that. Real life, you don't get those happy endings. You try to find ways to find peace and serenity from it, but you're not able to always get that happy ending. So it did break. It was pretty heartbreaking to hear that last discussion they had with I bet we were fun, and he's like, yeah, we were. But I feel like just for this, from the story's perspective, like it fits better that they don't end up together. Well, what do you guys think? Do you guys wish that they could have gotten back together, or was that the way to go about it?
I think the way I thought about that relationship, I'm not saying I'm not glad they didn't end up back together, but it's good that they didn't because the way the story goes, you know what I mean? It would have been dumb if it's like out of nowhere she just remembered all the memories, because it makes sense that she does it because she never lived that future. It would have made sense if like it was someone from a different multiverse, and now that she's living in this one, like some way somehow past is intertwined, like in like Endgame when they got I know she's a machine, but like it's like with Gamora's sister, Nebula, where they freaking Thanos, saw her memories from the future, even though she was in the past. And I think it's dope. Oh, that's crazy now because like, we have one from the future. But yeah, I'm glad. And another reason why is because I'm just like, oh shit, my bad, I have brain fart. But I think the reason why I'm glad that it didn't work out is for the fact that it just didn't make sense. I'll touch back on it. I lost my train of thought. My bad.
That's okay. If you want, we'll love Albert give his take on that. What do you think about that,
I'm getting back in my groove, guys. I'm getting back in my groove. It's been a minute. So I'm getting back in my groove.
Nah, to be honest, and I'm biased on this, but I just feel like characters should be allowed to go through things with consequences. It would have been really easy for him to cop out and get them back together. I still think it's kind of a cop out that they're starting to flirt the idea of him and Nebula.
Yeah, that was
you know what I'm saying? Like I genuinely believe that he should just deal with that, process his stuff, and then move on as a team, but what do I know? I'm not a movie writer, so.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie though, that gaze that he gave her when he gave it a thought, it was looking at her was pretty funny, and her reaction was pretty funny.
It was funny, yeah, but I'm just like, nah.
He's like, what are you? She's like, what are you looking at me for? Like, stop staring at me.
And speaking along with that too, something I wondered this because I heard some murmurs and some grumblings this was the case, but I do think James Gunn might have been a little bit disgruntled on Gamora being killed and then playing with his characters and him having to figure out a new way to bring Gamora back or have it make sense. And the reason I say that is because in that elevator scene where Quill is relating all the events that led up to into that from Gamora's death, like she's back, but she's a total dick. I feel like that was kind of meta commentary from James Gunn, like pretty much saying, oh, the MCU screwed with my characters and screwed with my world, and they wanted, this is what they did with my characters. Just the way that it felt
I
like
thought
it was
that
a
was
little.
I thought it was cool to be more badass.
And I really think it also relates on it's also a clever way too, because it relates to Peter's pain and what he's been through. Like, it's meant to be played for comedic effect, just given the stake that they're in and a high tense situation. But you can just tell from the way he's talking about it, like, you know, dude, I just need a hug. Like, dude, I'm hurt. Like, I'm suffering because of this. So I think that was like a pretty clever way to include kind of his James Gunn's take on that, but also how to relate to what Peter's feeling, what he's going through. One thing
Well, I
really
remember, man, my bad.
go for it. Go for it.
Now, finish your thought. Finish your thought.
I know I was actually gonna go on, so that's why. But go for it.
Yes, I remember my thought. I was gonna say, like, what I did like about that is the fact that it felt like real life, you know, where it's Peter's situation is different than real life, but it's like when one person isn't over the other. You know what I'm saying? Is like time moves on. Obviously, Peter lost Gamora. He knows she died. But what sucks for him is like, just imagine you get, you know, a relationship ends, and obviously she died, but he's like, there's always one that doesn't get over it, and then there's always one that is, and the one that is over is Gamora, only because she doesn't know. And Quill's like, damn, I'm dealing with this, but it sucks for him because that's what I'm saying. It's not like real life, because once someone dies, you know, here we're not gonna see them again. So he's dealing with a whole lot of like pain, you know, like it made it harder on him with the whole multiverse shit. But I like it, my bad. But I like it because it feels like real life is what I was trying.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not 51st dates, you know, and she is a completely different person. I mean, that's how it is. Like, I thought James Gunn was bringing it full circle with her character too, because she's supposed to be like, she's supposed to be a badass. I mean, she's supposed to be like, you know, this no nonsense kind of character anyway.
Because the team, yeah.
Yeah, you know, so I mean, at the end of the day, like, I feel like that was just her coming into form. Sucks for Peter, but I'm not Peter, so.
Yeah, I like that, Albert, because I do feel like we all knew that's how she is. She's a you know, badass. The only reason why she gets soft, because she was always with Thanos, obviously. But when she joined the team, is that when she got another side of her, you know, she got more affectionate, and that's when I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, this is the Gamora we all know her to be. Like, if she really want to be that badass, but it makes her a greater person just being on the soft side sometimes, or just being emotional or caring.
And obviously we knew that Adam Warlock was going to be coming. He was hinted at in the post-credit scene of Guardians 2. I felt like we were going to see him, so just because obviously he has a huge stake and a huge involvement in the Infinity Gauntlet comic storyline. So I felt like we were going to see him either in Infinity War or Endgame. So I was like, okay, if we're not gonna see him there, we're gonna see him in Guardians 3, right? So we finally got to see Adam Warlock in all his glory. Did you guys like his inclusion, or would you guys have changed things, or how did you guys feel about his character?
It's a loaded question, man. There's a lot I'd change, but no, it was cool seeing Adam Warlock. It's just crazy he came like an entire arc later. I mean, I know he pops up every now and then in separate stories, but like, it was like, yeah, I mean, you missed Infinity Gauntlet, like, so what are you doing here? You know, like, what are you doing here? I do like that they tied it back to the High Evolutionary. I think it's crazy again, just how much of that movie like he's in without physically being there. Because it's speculated that he created the race that created Adam Warlock.
Yeah,
I mean, even
but he does say it is said that he does create the Sovereign.
Oh, see, then there you go. Like, I mean, the fact that, like, I don't know, just like you guys were saying, like the theme of it is just it comes full circle. Everything comes full circle. I think they could have picked a different actor. I know that's a hot take. I like him as an actor, but like,
that is I like that. But
I genuinely feel like there could have been somebody that could have fit that character better. Give me time on it though, because I don't know who. Maybe Sean Penn. I don't know.
Sean Penn, really? Adam Warlock?
Now, Sean Penn's an old though, dude, no?
He's old, yeah, but I mean, give him some long hair, maybe a wig. He can play a solemn character.
I ain't
gonna lie, I completely forgot about Adam Warlock. This whole time we were talking to you, brought it up, Nick. The one thing, my bad, Albert. Do you have a final thought? My bad.
No, you're good.
And so what I was gonna say, I just didn't like the fact how they made him look so weak, because we know how powerful he gets to be, you know, in the comics and all that. But his intro, I thought was a little weak because they made him look weak and clumsy. And yeah, we know he just came out like a cocoon, right? So it's like, why are you making him? We know how powerful he is, but damn, like really, you're gonna make him look like a little chump, some way. Like we saw him, you know, kick Nebula's butt in the beginning, and then eventually, some way, he's so powerful that he's gonna escape. Right now, I see him as a magician. He's a great escapist. You know, no matter what the heck he's doing, he gets out of that. But other than that, I mean, they didn't give him the full potential. That's the one thing I definitely don't like about how they introduced Adam Warlock. Because he's way powerful. We know that to be. He's supposed to be one of the, you know, most powerful out there.
Right. And I was gonna say, I agree with you, dude.
And it's like he didn't literally just come out the cocoon, you know? So it's like, well, how long has he been out for?
I mean, and not to be the guy that keeps referencing the comic books, but yeah, like even when he first manifested, like he instantly took control of the team and started assigning roles. Like he was like, all right, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. And
but I like
know,
that you brought that up. Go for it.
I was gonna say, yeah, just to see him kind of like act like a baby giraffe and find his legs was just like wild to me. Yeah, I'm like, I mean, and I get it. It's for the masses. It's not for like, you know, core fans. But like, man, does he even need an intro like that? Like, why can't he just come out the gate swinging? You know? I don't know.
And now to touch on that, I think it's funny that you brought that up because, like, for real, dude, it's like how was I gonna say? Well, no, for the comics, my bad, not that is funny. I'm glad that you touched on it, kind of bring back the comic book thing, because I'm that kind of dude. I'm the same guy, man. Like I'm like, I want movies and shows to be as, you know, comic book accurate as possible. Like obviously we don't want to see the live action of a, you know, every page that we read in a comic book. Like, no, you got to be a little bit different. But as long as it stays close to home, you know, comic books, like I'm all for it. So that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because you're like, I don't want to be that guy. Nah, brother, it's okay, because I'm also that guy. Don't even
it just felt different because obviously in the comics, Adam Warlock is essentially like Space Jesus, and here he's just a dependent mama's boy who isn't as powerful as he is. But he had the soul stone, the soul gem in the comics, and here, and in here he just has whatever it's meant to be, looking like it, but he doesn't obviously have an Infinity Stone that he harnesses its power. Obviously, that was more meant for Vision. So I think with Adam's inclusion, they did it more with Vision, or they took the route where Vision was going to take that place essentially, and then they just figured, well, we're still going to have Adam somewhere, so we don't know where, or we don't know how that's going to come about. But overall, I mean, he isn't as powerful, and he's not a focal point of the story. And he's essentially just doing his mother's bidding, whatever she tells him. So he has no concepts of morality or right or wrong. So he's and now at the end of the story, obviously we see that like, oh, I was trying to kill you. Like, why did you rescue me? And that's the whole thing. Like, everyone deserves a second chance, which obviously is a theme amongst all these Guardians movies. So I am excited to see him more. I do like the actor Will Poulter. He obviously changed a lot since his We Are the Miller Kenny days. So I'm actually excited to see him. I do feel he fits
Maze
the role
Runner.
well. Oh, Maze Runner! I forgot he was in that too.
Well,
they just called him Eyebrows back then. Now we're just gonna call him Adam Swolock, I think is what we're gonna call him. But I am excited to see more of him. Hopefully they develop his character a little bit more. Like he resembles that powerful creature that we knew from the comics. But we're all gonna see how that's gonna all play out. And in conclusion, go ahead.
Oh, well, just to touch on Adam Warlock, just before we move on, we already know we are going to see him moving forward, but we already know who his main villain is going to be. It's going to be the Revolutionary, because he killed his mom, you know? So, and we already know, well, I mean, I know we're going to see them both moving forward, and we know I think who the main villain is going to be for him, or at least a personal vendetta, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how far off the rails we're gonna let this go, but I would like to see him versus Sentinel, like at some point.
That'd be interesting.
just because it's live action, you know, and it'd be two Space Jesus versus who's the better Space Jesus, you
I
know.
love that Space Jesus term, yo. That's really
I
funny.
actually did think it was interesting though, because in the comics, the High Evolutionary gave Adam his name, Orlok, and then in the movie,
Mhm.
he also gave him his name. So I thought that was a cool little. I don't know if that was an intention to do that, if James Gunn knew that, but
I
it
think
was pretty
so,
cool that.
because it
But
happens
like,
pretty quick in the Infinity Gauntlet saga.
yeah. But see, like I said,
I,
it's a lot is close to heart, close to home. The comic books, I'm all for it, baby.
and just we're gonna start wrapping things up now. But how did you guys feel that this iteration of the Guardians, how everything got wrapped up in its conclusion? Did you guys like it? Was it strong? Was there something else you guys would have wanted to see? How did you guys feel about that?
Nobody would know about the Guardians if it wasn't for James Gunn. I mean, like honestly, that's the truth of it. And I mean, I talk to you about that all the time, but like Star-Lord was nothing
Nobody.
like,
What, a D-list character? D
yeah,
minus
like
character?
Star-Lord was nothing like how he is in these comic books at all. It is just, I don't know, it grounded him. It made him a lot more relatable. The team was a lot more relatable and a lot more concise. I'm surprised they didn't have a talking ship though. Like I feel like that's the one thing they missed out on.
I was really hoping for that, honestly.
I honestly think they did that. James Gunn did that on purpose because we already had Friday for Iron Man and all that, you know. So like,
Mhm.
oh, we've seen enough AI.
Yeah, they
Like,
probably just didn't want that to be the same, in all honesty. It just would have felt like, oh, we're rehashing the same things that have been done before, the AI that talking AI or whatever.
yeah, because the
Like
main
that.
AI and when it comes to actually like non-physical form, it has to be Friday. That's what we always think about, you know, because of Iron Man. And then we know Vision, he's the next life form AI, you know what I mean? But
I
other
just
than
see it as like a
that,
Knight Rider type thing, like them solving crimes and
yeah.
the ship giving them hints.
But I think they went into the sunset in a good way, you know, because we already know Zoe Saldana isn't gonna come back as Gamora, and I think that's enough. I think, yeah, I don't know if it's because she got killed off on Endgame that's why she's not coming back, or that's why they killed her off because they knew she wasn't gonna come back, and instead of making a new actor, you know, that's probably why. But I think yeah, it's cool. And then we know Drax, he's gonna end up helping Nebula, you know, because he's gonna go back to what he's always really wanted to do with his life, and that's be a dad. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty awesome because that's why he is who he is. All of them went through something to become the way they are. You know what I mean? And so and then we know we talked about it already with uh damn the one that said she wanted to thing, I said she's more powerful than she is. I can't really pretty.
Well, Mantis?
Yeah, Mantis. Oh my god. But Mantis and then Rocket, we know what he's gonna do moving forward. Man, that's freaking awesome. I thought that was sweet. Groot, they're like brothers or father and son. You know, they're like type brothers or father and son. Groot is sticking with Rocket no matter freaking what. And then Quill just needs a break. So that's cool. So that's what I'm saying. He's just going. They all went into the sunset in a good way. I believe that's my opinion.
Yeah. Because I was expecting one in discussions, even like I had told Albert in preparation for this movie, like I'm pretty sure someone's gonna die at some point. I was more hinting at Drax because obviously Batista came out in the very beginning saying that this is gonna be his final film, this is not. So I was like, okay, Drax is probably gonna be the one to die. So I was expecting that, but I do feel I'm actually glad that happened. That didn't happen just because I think it tied up all their stories in a great way and was a good conclusion with the characters we're probably, which is going to be, we're probably not going to see Drax, Nebula, Mantis, and we'll probably see Gamora just because she's a Ravager, but those three we're probably not going to see anymore. So I felt like this was a satisfying conclusion for them where they got their happy ending and their peaceful conclusion because they deserved it with everything that they had went through in their lives. And I just thought it was a very heartwarming thing because this trilogy started, our opening to these characters, or more so Quill, but to this team was through dancing, and it ended with dancing. So I felt like that was a whole, like a pretty heartwarming, sincere thing. And then they even got Drax to dance. You remember in the second one, he had his philosophy to Peter about there are dancers and there are non-dancers, and he's like, I never dance. He takes the Corbin Blue route from High School Musical. I don't dance. whatever. But and then even in the beginning of the third movie, when Mantis tries to get him to dance, he says only idiots dance. So of course we know when it's the kids asking you can't deny a kid when they say, hey, come on, come dance.
And the one cool thing, touching on what you just said, Nick, to extend it, is like even the way they tell their walkway, you know, them running into the sunset. It's not even where they're cutting it where they can't come back. You know, it's like James Gunn wrote it where it's like, okay, he didn't die. To be honest, someone did die, and it was Quill, but since he's half alien, he came back to life. So someone did die when people said someone was gonna die. But because y'all remember we got frozen in outer space as a human, you blow up.
Adam saved him.
When it ended, it's like Nick said, we might not see the three that you just said again, but they're not written off yet. You know, like it's like they have a chance to come back.
The door is open for them.
My capitalist brain went straight to Disney Plus spinoffs. I mean, that's exactly the first thing I thought. Not that that'd be a bad thing, but I do expect to see like a Rocket and Groot spinoff maybe or something like that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would.
And at this point, this is where we rate this film. I'm gonna give this film a 10 out of 10. I think it's perfect on all accounts and on every level. Just the acting, the cinematography, the direction, the editing, action, everything about this film is the emotions. It's everything about this film. And I want to just one point I want to make is I think the theme I've noticed amongst all of these Guardians movies is that maybe with the exception of the first one, but the others definitely, but the monsters are more monster than the monsters that they create. Or those monsters, they're the ones that are the more dangerous monsters than the monsters they create. Obviously, we saw that Rocket, obviously he was created by the High Evolutionary, and Thanos with Gamora and Nebula. We saw that obviously with Ego. So I felt like that was actually a prevalent theme that, you know, those that are created by the monsters, they tend to go through development or they go through some kind of progression where they're able to, despite the pain and the trauma they've been through, they were able to overcome that and become better through it. So I felt like that's a pretty cool theme that we see amongst this whole trilogy. So I think that's a cool little way to wrap it up. But 10 out of 10 for me. Freaking love this movie. Best, for sure, best post-Endgame movie, without a doubt. But what about you guys?
Damn, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Nick. I think this is probably gonna be my first 10 on every show. I mean, every show that we've done for a show.
Our movie,
yeah. It's gonna be my first 10 out of 10 because you know me, I love action, I love comedy. Those are my two favorites to watch, and it was a perfect mix of it. And like you said, music, action, storyline, check. It marks them all up, and I always find something little to complain about for some reason. Where I'll knock off a 0.5 or a full score or 2. But now I think I'm trying to even think right now, like thinking back, I don't think there's anything I could complain about, to be honest.
Right.
And that's why I give it a solid 10.
What about you, Albert? What do you rate this movie out of 10?
See, I'm gonna have to beat the different one. I'm sorry, guys.
No, go
for it. Yeah. I'll give it an 8. It's a fun movie. I really do like, again, the soundtrack and the costumes as well. I mean, the High Evolutionary's skin mask was really cool.
Yeah.
You could see it like it was a lot of nice attention to detail, but I am burnt out on like superhero movies as a whole. I do like that it stood as a standalone film. I think that is, you know, one of the best things like you can do for a franchise movie is make it to where you don't have to watch every other movie in order to understand the gist of this one. But as far as like downsides, again, I do feel like even though everybody got dialogue and everybody got scenes, there were some characters that were underutilized. And I mean, that's what happens when you have superhero movies. You just have too many characters and not enough people get fleshed out.
Okay. Still a good rating though. So just make sure, obviously this movie's been out about a month and a half at this point. So it's not anything new, but it is great. It's probably going to come on Disney Plus very soon. So if you're one of those crabby people who says, I can't go to the movie theater because you just suck, then you can just wait for it to come out on streaming. But make sure to check this out. We're hopefully going to be posting episodes weekly. I'm going to try to get these guys on that kind of schedule. So next is going to be a review. Obviously, we have Across the Spider-Verse, and then we got the Flash to do. So we're going to be covering those in the coming episodes. So just stay tuned, follow us on Instagram, and thanks Albert. Albert, this is his first episode. He did a pretty good job.
Yes,
So
killed it, Albert.
good job to Albert.
Let's go, baby.
But we'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy. See you guys around. Thank you.
Out, yo.